The entertainment media is diverse, especially anime. It continues to tackle numerous sensitive societal issues with the sincerity they require. But for decades, one identity remained largely undiscussed in anime narratives: blackness. Recently, however, there has been a visible shift, and through characters and stories centered on black protagonists, whether explicitly or allegorically, anime is tackling something it has long sidestepped: black trauma. While there are various anime that cover this aspect sincerely, notable examples include Michiko and Hatchin, Yasuke, Carol and Tuesday, and Cannon Busters. For black characters in these anime, the world itself often becomes a monster, hostile, erasing, and brutal. Michiko and Hatchin is set in a fictional South American country, but Brazil heavily inspires the setting, and the story centers on two characters: Michiko, an Afro-Latina woman who has just escaped from prison, and Hatchin, a white-passing girl living in an abusive foster home. Michiko breaks out to find her daughter. Hatchin escapes to find someone who cares. The show opens with violence, corruption, and broken families. From the very beginning, loss is baked into the narrative. Michiko has lost her freedom, her identity, and her place in the world. She's generally criminalized for being a woman of color and hated with bias, an experience that mirrors how society often treats black women who never secured their silver lining in this treacherous world. From Leopold's atrocities to plantations, black people never secured their place. Her trauma is always just under the surface. She's not written as a perfect hero. She's impulsive, aggressive, and reckless, but she's also full of love. Her trauma shows in how hard she fights to stay in control. And in a world that tries to strip her of everything, that fight is a form of survival. Hatchin, meanwhile, represents a different kind of loss. She's been raised in a home where she's been emotionally and physically abused. Her story is quiet, but powerful. She's not black, but her connection with Michiko puts her right in the path of systems that fail the most vulnerable. Together, they're outsiders, one loud, one quiet, but both trying to reclaim something stolen from them by the never-forgiving societal cultures. Loss in Michiko and Hatchin isn't just about losing people. It's about being born into a world that decides your worth before you even understand what that means. Their journey is filled with danger, but it's also filled with growth. Their bond becomes a way to survive, even if survival doesn't look clean or easy. Yasuke is something different from what you can expect. While some claim him to be a samurai under Nobunaga Oda, the other party shoots back and explains he was a warrior, not a samurai of a high order. Here's an example. Yasuke is a controversial character in the diverse mediums. Well, hello Ubisoft. Ubisoft took a fall from grace with their recent games, but their last shot was a game about Yasuke, Assassin's Creed Shadows. However, they failed to handle it maturely, resulting in a significant loss for their stock market. While he's indeed a hot and controversial topic, Mappa's anime does a brilliant job of portraying his personality, but there's a twist. He's an African man who became a samurai in Japan during the 16th century. The show reimagines him in a sci-fi fantasy world full of magic and mechs, but the core of Yasuke's character is grounded in something real: displacement. Yasuke is a man pulled from his homeland, placed into a new society, and then rejected by that same society. Some feared him and never truly accepted him. Even after fighting for Japan, even after serving Oda Nobunaga, he's still treated like a stranger, a foreigner, an outsider. That experience hits hard. Yasuke's trauma isn't just emotional, it's historical. He represents how often black people are used and then discarded after fulfilling their role, a straight stab in the back. He's not just displaced physically, he has been displaced from his own identity, from his culture, from his sense of belonging. What makes Yasuke compelling is how quiet he is. He doesn't talk much. He's haunted by what he's seen and what he's lost. And that silence says more than dialogue ever could. It's a man constantly reliving his failure to protect the people he cared about. And it's also a man who's tired of carrying the weight of other people's expectations. In this story, survival doesn't look like glory. It looks like exhaustion, like a sword you don't want to pick up again but have to. Yasuke's trauma isn't resolved. It just continues. And that's the point. Some pain doesn't go away. It just changes shape. Now, This one's different. It's a quieter show. It's not about fighting or war, it's about the delicacy that is music. Two girls are trying to make a name for themselves on Mars, but under that soft musical surface is a story about systemic oppression and emotional isolation. Carol is a black girl who grew up as a refugee from Earth. She was abandoned as a baby. She has no family, no real home, and very little support. She lives day to day by performing on the streets, staying in shelters, and working odd jobs to make ends meet. Her trauma doesn't come from battles or explosions, it comes from being erased. The world doesn't see her, doesn't value her, and yet, she survives. She sings. Music becomes her language, her protest, her healing. When she meets Tuesday, a wealthy white girl who has run away from home, their differences are immediately apparent. Tuesday has money, a background, a safety net. Carol has none of that, and yet the show doesn't make Carol bitter or angry. It lets her be soft, kind, and driven. But make no mistake, she's surviving in a world that doesn't want her to exist. That subtlety is what makes Carol and Tuesday so important. It's not about a revolution with guns, it's about a revolution with a mic. The politics are right there too. Tuesday's mother is a politician pushing anti-immigrant laws, something Carol directly suffers from due to her skin color, their surveillance, deportation, and silencing of dissent. And yet Carol resists not by yelling but by continuing to create. She's proof that black trauma isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet battle to stay visible. You deserve everything. It effortlessly introduces us to a broader world of black artists and creatives, each bringing their history into the spotlight. The show isn't trying to offer easy answers. It's trying to show that being a black artist means constantly fighting to be heard, on every level. This show is a wild ride. Bright colors, wild tech, immortal outlaws. It's got humor, action, robots, but right at the center is Philly the Kid, a black man cursed with immortality. He can't die. Every time he gets shot, blown up, or stabbed, he just comes back. Sounds cool, right? But it's deeply tragic. Philly doesn't want to live forever. His immortality becomes a metaphor for something we rarely talk about: the romanticization of black suffering. Philly gets hurt constantly, and nobody blinks. His pain is treated like a punchline, like it doesn't matter. But the show pushes back. Underneath his tough exterior, Philly is grieving. He's angry. He's tired. He's traumatized. He's a man who keeps losing things, people, places, time, and can't ever move on because his body won't let him. He's stuck in a cycle of violence and survival. That's not empowerment. That's entrapment. And what makes it even harder is how others see him. He's the outlaw, the criminal, the one who's always the problem. It doesn't matter that he's also the one trying to help and protect. The world keeps pushing him out. But throughout the story, we start to see his walls break down. He bonds with others. He begins to care. And slowly we realize that his story isn't about being indestructible. It's about learning how to live again, even when the pain never leaves. So, if you've made it this far, here's something you must know: the connections between these shows and how they coherently address these issues. In Michiko and Hatchin, we see what happens when society criminalizes black womanhood. In Yasuke, we see how history erases and isolates. In Carol and Tuesday, we see the quiet oppression of being invisible. In Cannon Busters, we see how constant survival becomes its prison. These anime don't present black trauma as something abstract. They show it as a lived reality, a force that shapes identity, scars memory, and defines how a person moves through the world. But more than that, these stories also show black resilience. These characters don't give up. They don't disappear. They persist through violence and silence.